Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast, where we do interviews with friends like Miss Luana here on topics to help our listeners, that's you, find the resources, tools, and support that they need to be their best inspired selves. So, how are you doing today, Miss Luana?
I am really awesome, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing really well. It's sunny. All my kids are home for spring break, and I just I love the name Luana. One of my first au pairs, which is someone who comes watches your children, was from Brazil, and her name was Luana. So it always has a special place in
Ah,
my heart. And
I
I
chose it myself.
yeah. Oh, did you? Did you change your name as an adult?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I changed my first and my last name at the same time as when I bailed the country and went to live in a ditch for 3 months. So it was
Oh my
part of my transformation, shall we say.
Yeah, you came out of the ditch. You didn't want to have the same name, huh?
I
Wow.
was like, I am transformed.
Well, I would hope so, right? Well, and on a completely bright side of that, I think when you literally come from a ditch to no matter what is happening, unless you're in a ditch, you realize that it can be better, right?
Exact. Do you know what? I had a great time in my ditch. I really did. It was really peaceful. It was cold. It was winter. We had no power, no internet, no running water. We were covered by a polytunnel. Um, it was just what I needed at the time. I needed a full reset. And that's exactly what I got. We were 2.5 hours away from any sort of civilization because I didn't have transport either. I'll just say as well, it was by choice. It wasn't because I had to be there. It was because I needed space. And so off I went. And yeah, that's where I wrote my first book, actually.
Awesome. Wow. So what took you from an old name to an old ditch to a new name and a new book and coming out of the ditch?
I was in the UK and I I used to be an actress and I was in the press a lot. And I was in the press I was talking to a journalist about a film I was in. And anyway, what went out the next day wasn't the story about my film, but the story around my marriage. And it went crazy. I'll give you a bit more information there. My husband had just told me he was transgender, and I, I mean that happens, doesn't it? But I think the reason why the story went so big was because our attitude towards it wasn't the norm. I'm quite a chilled out person, so I was like, okay, you've got to be who you truly are on the inside. I'm with you every step of the way. And we were looking online. I was looking for people to resonate with, and I couldn't find anybody. And I could just see a lot of people who in my situation at the time who were hurt and angry and bitter, and I'm not judging anybody else, but I couldn't resonate with that because that's not how I felt at all. So yeah, the story just blew up, and within about 6 months, I mean, we were on documentaries for national television, all sorts of things like constant. We had journalists, TV producers knocking on our door. It went really crazy. And then after 6 months, something confusing happened where and there is a reason I'm saying he decided not to continue down that journey, and that really confused me even more than the first bombshell because I didn't understand it. I was so confused, and we'd just been on a national documentary, and a load of journalists wanted to speak to us, and I didn't know what to say. I was confused. I was hurting. This sort of thing you can't prepare for. like, nobody knows really how they would react. And the way I reacted was I buggered off to Portugal with a family friend. There was a family friend who was already out there. That family friend is now my partner. So I went out there to see him. He already had some land, and I just stayed out there with him. And he had, it was the beginning of, he was making it sustainable off the grid, and I'd always dreamed of opening an animal sanctuary, so we decided to go in together. Now, after 3 years, I stayed there. It was a ditch with a bed in it and a camping stove and a polytunnel over the top. And it was really crazy because if we were ever on the bed and we dropped something off the bed, that's it. It was gone. You know, we were screwed. It was covered in mud. So, you know, it was quite memorable. But it was amazing to be out in the middle of nature with nothing around. You know, you could close your eyes and it was just the sound of nature. No cars, no nothing, no people, just the sound of nature. And it was amazing. So yeah, it was a bit of an experience, to say the least.
So how do you come, like, how do you leave that? I can think that would be the question. Like, if you go from this crazy stuff happening to you, and to your husband, like, sounds like he was going through, or your prior partner, sounds like he was going through a
Yeah.
lot. And then you're like, no, I'm good. I'm going to just go reset for a minute. And then you get to do that, right? In this beautiful place with all of the sounds and the pace that you love. And then you come out of it. Like, I could see a lot of people just saying, you know what, this works. I think I'm like, maybe I'm projecting. I don't know. But like, oh, it's so quiet here. So what had you kind of come out of the ditch, like out of the nature, and sort of come back in with tech
Well,
people?
my partner stayed. I moved out to an apartment nearby, and I left him there doing his thing. He was the one, you know, working on the build constantly every day on his own, and I was still running an online business. So, and if you can imagine, that was a little bit crazy, you know. I was running this online business, fully online, and I was in the middle of nowhere, and I had no power, no internet, and so I had to walk to the nearest cafe, which took, it was about 3 hours, you know, there and back. But I did that to power up my devices and stuff. But you know, it taught me a lot of stuff, because I could only work until my devices had run out of charge. Once they were gone, they were gone. So I learned to be more productive. I learned to prioritize and just get on. And I learned not to work 24/7, because that's something I used to do as well.
Let's say it sort of gave you forced boundaries, right? When at one
Exactly.
point your phone's like, "Bloop," you're like, I guess
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. But the thing that got me to take myself out of that situation was my book had got to bestseller, and now I was in the media again, but this time because of my book, not about my personal life. And so, you know, I was doing a lot of interviews and things like that, and I really wanted to focus on my business, and I wasn't really able to do podcast interviews because even though we were in the middle of nowhere, there was still, I don't even know what their real names are, but I call them chickaroos. I've got the really noisy little grasshopper type things, and the sound's lovely, but they're really noisy. So it was quite windy as well. And if it rained, you know, we were in a polytunnel, it was really noisy. So I couldn't risk booking podcast interviews in or doing any sort of interview where I was there. And then I tried going to the cafe and doing it there a few times, but you know what I mean, there was just too much background noise. I couldn't risk it. So it just got to the point where I thought, you know what, I've done my healing now. It's time for me to go and really, really focus on my business. And so that's what I did. But there was a very strange part in between, which was where one day I was covered in mud. It was winter, you know, and the next day I was, traveling to do speaking engagements all over the world and to be interviewed on TV and stuff. So I felt like I was living a double life. I was like, right, okay, which version of Luana am I today? Am I in my wellies? Or am I in a 5-star hotel doing my hair and makeup ready for a TV interview? Like, it was just a bit crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine that there was like a lot of transition to sort of being outside, being able to wear what you want, be how you want, you know.
There was nobody around. Sometimes I didn't even bother wearing clothes. Like, we were literally out there and there was nobody.
Yeah, and then you're like, yeah, I probably should wear my underwear and a bra today at least, I'm going talking to people.
Yeah, now I actually have to put clothes on and look decent.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, one thing I'm just really curious is you probably would have had an easier time getting your book out if you would have used your old persona, right? Your old name, your old so
Yeah.
it's interesting that you kind of went the
My
hard way.
first book actually did go in my old name.
Oh, okay.
So it must have been after the book went out that I changed my name. It must have been towards towards the end. But my first one was in my old name, and then since then I just switched to my new name, and it didn't seem to affect anything.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I just know
Mm.
you ever see like online internet marketers or online business owners, they always do this like if I had no name and I had to start over, what would I do in 30 days, right? And so it's like not having a following, not having a list, not having all these
Mm.
things and then starting over. And I doubt you thought of it that way, but essentially you're like, oh, by fame, by being in the spotlight, I'm gonna just
Mm.
start over and move forward. um
Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted. I mean, I've never tried to hide anything about my past. I did a lot of acting as well, and even on my IMDb page now, it's in my old name, and then it's in my new name's in brackets. So there's nothing. It's not that I want to hide who I was. It's more, I don't know. I just don't.
Stepping
I
in.
changed so much that I don't feel I could relate to that person anymore. And because my marriage had broken up, I didn't want that surname anymore. And I didn't want to go back to my maiden name either because I just felt so far removed from that person. And my name, I never liked my first name.
Well, my maiden name used to be Funk,
Oh, awesome.
so I was pretty sure no matter what happened, it was gonna be an upgrade, right? So because no hyphenating, because it'd be like Funkin' what? Funkin' Johnson, like that could not possibly be a good idea. So I was happy to get a new name as well, just for a different reason.
I like funk.
Well, I grew up in the 80s, so it was like, we gotta funk, gotta have that funk.
Yes.
Yeah. So not as much fun living with that as as a teenager, I assure you.
Well, my name was Arian. So it's really common in Wales where I come from. But anywhere outside of Wales and I get called alien and all sorts. I'll never forget. I was on a cruise ship once and the comedian asked me my name and I said Arian and that was it. He was gone off his set talking about Alien and the Predator for about 15 minutes. So I was just like, oh. But quite often I'd phone taxis and I'd have Alien on the front and I'd think, oh no.
Oh no, yeah, I could. So yeah, so it got for a different reason, but yeah, certainly it's interesting. So yeah, getting to select something is probably more fun anyway. So so you have your book out, I've gone to your website, so it's yourname.com. What are you doing now that you've moved out of the ditch and you moved into the apartment and you've written the books, like what is in store for you now, and how do you help people through your business that you have?
Yeah, so with this crazy experience that I had with the press, um, then everything with my book, I started helping people to write and publish books and become best-selling authors, specifically entrepreneurs, who want to write the book to grow their business. That's my niche. And then from there, well, my coach said to me one day, "Why don't you help people to get into the media?" And I said something like, "Don't be stupid. Everyone knows how to get into the media." And she says, "No, they don't." And then I noticed, and it hit me like a brick. It was like, "What? You mean not every business owner is regularly in the press? Like, why not?" I was baffled by it. So I started working on that. And the other thing was, obviously, with this experience that I'd had with the press, there was a lot of things, I made a lot of mistakes, because even though I was well used to being in the press, I was also very naive and I hadn't realized. Like, I'll give you an example. If anybody who's listening to this finds them in a similar situation, then please remember this. If a press comes to you and they want to talk to you about a story which is about you and your business or whatever, something to do with you, and you refuse to talk to them, don't for a second think that that story isn't going out. It will still go out. It's just you won't have your input. So when I ran off to Portugal and decided not to speak to any journalists, did the story still go out? Yes. But because it went without my input, it was not what I would have wanted going out. I'll never forget one headline, which was it was claiming that I'd said that my husband smells and that's why we'd broken up. I mean, it was completely bizarre, but it was it was something that I'd said in a documentary that was taken out of context. Now, in the article, it might have explained more about what I actually meant. It wasn't that at all. But I don't know because I didn't read it. But, it was a huge lesson to me. Oh, okay, I'll just talk to the press from now on. Like, if there's anything positive or negative, you've got to speak to them. Otherwise, that is your one chance to be able to get your side of things across. And if it is something negative, then just be honest. Don't try and get away from the question. Don't say no comment, none of that, because all of that makes you look dodgy. But just be real and be honest and explain. And if for whatever reason you can't, then explain why you can't as well, and say when you'll be happy to do a follow-up when you are able to do more. Like that is probably the biggest lesson that I learned from that whole experience. And so when I work with my clients, I don't just get them booked onto these things. I make sure they know exactly what they're doing. I make sure they know exactly how to answer difficult questions. And I work with them a lot on building their reputation and protecting their reputation. For example, if trolls decide to attack, because that's something that I've really, really had to fight against. And this happened as a result of all of this as well. When I ran off to Portugal, then there was that in the paper. And then the next thing I knew, I used to run an acting academy. And a few years before this, I'd reported a film director who had been sending very inappropriate messages regarding a teenager, one of my students. So naturally, I sent it to the police. Of course I did. And then I told him, maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. I phoned him and I said, look, I've just reported you to the police because I was sent this screenshot. So, I followed my safeguarding procedures. I've sent it to the police. I just wanted to let you know. Because, I don't know why, I just did. But what I found out was, anyway, this big hate campaign started where, people were holding live events even in my honor, and there was hate groups online and all of these things basically claiming that I was a scammer. And it's hard when these things happen, and naturally what we want to do is hide away. But I found out that this guy that I'd reported to the police was behind the whole thing, because he made a very, very rookie error. He was sending this copy and paste message to basically everybody who was on my friends list. And on one person that he'd sent to, he'd accidentally sent it from his personal profile instead of his fake profile. So I knew it was him. And but a lot of people were taken in, and a lot of people believed him. So then they were carrying on, these things. And I didn't. Originally, I hid away a bit. That's our natural response. And then I got my act together, and I went in the Huffington Post to share my story. I spoke to the press, the UK press, and it went in all of the national newspapers what was happening. So, and this is something that I help my clients with as well, which is why I was talking about it, because the natural thing is that we want to hide away. It's scary, it feels like we're losing control. We don't know what these people are capable of. But hiding away is not the right thing to do. If it's just a silly little troll leaving the old scam comment or whatever, just ignore those. But I'm talking about if somebody is really, really going for it, a hate campaign, if they're gathering people and they're setting up hate groups and all of this stuff, it needs to be tackled, especially if they're spreading rumors, which can destroy your reputation. So instead of hiding, you need to do the opposite. You need to shine a light on it. And that's exactly what I did. I posted on all my social media profiles, and then went into the Huffington Post and into the UK press, and all of that stuff as well, and I just shared what my truth was, along with any evidence. And that's what I would suggest anybody else does as well. And it's terrifying. It's not an easy thing to do, because you don't want to let people know it's happening, because it's awful. It's bullying, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a question that I was always curious about. So you hear on the news, or you hear in like trash TV and stuff about don't say bad things about people because that's defamation of character, or you can't say bad things because there's all these legal ramifications. However, I still keep seeing like someone will actually use the name of a person and then say bad things. And what I don't understand is, when does it when does it become legal and illegal? Like, why is it okay?
Yeah.
When isn't it bullying, right? How do you you should not, I don't think you should ever do that. Like, if the way to get ahead
No.
is you have to stomp on someone's face, well then,
Oh,
maybe you don't deserve to be ahead. But what I don't understand though is, I don't understand why people do that, but I really don't understand where that line is. Like that gentleman who, you know, sucked and said bad things about you little girls, and then goes in and defames someone. How does he get away with that? Like, how do people, are they able to do that without some kind of legal
yeah.
repercussions?
It's horrible. Like, they rarely they rarely get done for it. And it's such a horrible thing to do, to be spreading rumors like that. And they damage. The normal people don't go around trying to destroy other human beings. It's not what regular happy people do. These people have got to be very damaged themselves, and bitter and twisted. It's just, it's not nice at all, and it's awful to be on the other side of it. So
But I think that one thing that probably is important to note though is, like what you said was, make sure you talk to the press, because then you get some say, or at least you get a good shot at having a say.
yeah.
And I think the press are actually just out to get like a ratings, right? They want to get people to read. They need the titles. They need the
Oh,
most.
yes.
Whereas, like, that's different than a troll or someone who's trying to defame you or like pull you down. Because I think your part of your business is saying, let me show you how to be more visible with
Yeah,
these people and protect yourself from
exactly.
not
Yeah,
necessarily just the press, but from the people behind the press too that are gonna, want to pull.
exactly. Um, and the press aren't out, to make people look bad or whatever. Generally, if they are asking questions that are deemed as negative or whatever, it's because they want to get the truth out, and they want the story. They want to get to the bottom of what's actually going on, and so they don't want people coming in with these well rehearsed surface answers, and so they'll use some techniques to get deeper, and the thing is as well, a lot of people are scared of doing interviews because they think that things like that's going to happen. It is very rare. Most of the time when you do go for interviews on TV or whatever, the host want you to do a good job. They're going to help you to feel relaxed. They'll have a chat. Normally they'll have a chat with you beforehand. They'll let you know the types of questions that they're going to ask, just like we had a little 5-minute chat before we started recording this. Well, they do the same for TV, for radio. They want you to do well. And yeah, so it very rarely happens. But of course, if there is some sort of accusation, I had a client who was accused of scamming people not long ago. Within 4 hours, we had everything pulled down, and it's really hard to think clearly yourself when you're in that situation, because you have to remove emotion from the equation, and that's not an easy thing to do when you're in the middle of it, and you're in fear and everything like that. But yeah, 4.5 hours, and we got something like that. We got everything taken down, and that's because we found the person who was heading it all, and we reached out to him, or she reached out to him. I told her what to say, and just showing the evidence, like, look, what's this about? Like, this is what really happened, and she showed him her evidence, and then she posted something similar publicly as well, and he apologized. He wasn't trying to be a nasty little troll. He had honestly got the wrong end of the stick. And that can happen sometimes. We can think, oh, these are all horrible people. But the fact is, like when I had all of those people calling me a scammer, yeah, it was made up originally, but most of the people who were carrying it on genuinely believed it. So, they're not all nasty, horrible people. Some of them think that they're doing a public service, they think they're doing a good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think that that's a great lead in to sort of, if you find yourself in the storm of negative press and you don't feel prepared, or even if you think you might be prepared, sometimes emotion takes hold. Is that a good time to reach out to someone like you and say, okay, something has happened. Even if I might feel prepared, I think I need a non-emotional guide, coach, person. Is that sort of
Yes.
the type of client that would be smart to reach out to you?
Yes, but ideally before this happens, before it's got out of hand. I wish that I had had somebody to turn to when all of this happened with me. I didn't, I had people who advised me and everything like that, but not to this depth, not to the depth that I do with my clients. And that's why we do the full thing. It's not just getting you into the media. We hold your hand the whole way through. We prepare you for interviews. We make sure you know how to answer questions that you don't want to answer, that you can't answer. We say what to do if you trip over your words. It doesn't matter, by the way. or if you go blank and forget what you're talking about again, it doesn't matter. I do it all the time. It's all about how you recover. And we do lots of my acting background's come in really handy as well, because we do some improvisation practice and that sort of thing.
So I wonder if one opportunity for people to consider is, if you've done something that might be spun, or that there's something that's happened, like you're getting a divorce and you're in the public eye, or you've had something bad happen, or your mom was arrested for doing drugs, right? Something crazy like that. Is it a good idea to come to someone ahead and go, look, this happened. It's not out there yet. It might not get out there, but I want to be able to either put it out there in my control.
Yes.
Know how to do damage control if it does surface. I mean, is that something that people do with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm working with somebody at the minute, actually. I can't talk about it because obviously, but yeah, there's a huge story that we're working on at the minute, which is, it's absolutely huge. So that's going to be a crazy one. But yeah, definitely. But the stage that I would suggest that people come to me is when they've got a business that's established. And when I say established, I mean they've already got a strong marketing plan. They've got a strong social media presence. They're clear on their offers. They know who their target audience is, and now they're ready to take it to the next level and to be getting maximum exposure. That's the stage. I wouldn't wait for something to happen like I did. Like I said, I wish that I had had somebody at the time, but then I wouldn't have learned all these lessons. So I don't wish, but that's the road that I took, and that is fine, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody else.
Well, sometimes our messes become our messages, right? So.
Exactly. Oh, totally. And I'm really happy, looking back a few years, I never ever would have seen me doing this. It wasn't my life plan. It wasn't. Everything I do comes from experience. And like I said before, I didn't realize that other people weren't doing it. So I never looked at the possibility. So it's it's crazy how things work out.
One thing before we wrap up, though, because we got to focus a lot on sort of the tough areas, but you also do a lot of other things, right? It's not just like, hey, if you think you might get in trouble, let's call Luana. It's, from what I understand, like how to get you visible if you're not, how to write a best-selling book to help your business. So what are your main offerings that you also support people with, in addition to sort of damage control, so that if people who are not finding themselves in a sticky situation are looking for someone that has your services, they'll know that they could reach out to you?
Yeah, so my main offer is done for you media, or dauntless PR, I like to call it. And it's basically, it's the whole package. It's where we pitch to the press on a regular basis, because the thing is, anybody can do this themselves. Anybody can do it themselves. It does take time and it takes consistency. And actually, if it's okay, I'd like to go into a bit how, if anybody's watching this, how they can go about it. So the first thing is to figure out, what your story is, and a lot of the time, what angle it is that you're going to approach the press with, to figure out exactly what you want to get out there, where would be appropriate for that message to get out, and then who to contact, and then to just go for it and make sure that every story you're pitching is going to the place that would be most likely to be interested in that. Somewhere that's published something similar before, or had something, if it's TV, they've had something about it before, but not the exact same thing. Yours has got to be on a different angle. So just something that I would recommend doing is just keeping an eye on the press, on what people are talking about, what's hot in the press right now, and then seeing what you can link to. But I will stress again, not to contact, because you look at what journalists are talking about. So if there's a particular journalist who is talking about your subject, contact them, not to ask if they want to do the same thing again. The answer will be no, but contact them with a different perspective, a new angle on that topic, and then you'll find that they'll probably be more interested. So you need to decide, what your angle is, what you want to get out of it, where you want to be featured, and then who to contact. And then you've got to be consistent. And this is where most people fall down. Right, journalists can get hundreds of pitches in a single day. They need to write, on average, about 7 stories a day. And they'll get probably, on average, it's around 300-400 pitches. So you've got to be one of those 7. You've got to cut through the noise, and it's got to be something that they're already interested in. Because if you keep sending them something that they're not, then they're going to blacklist you. They're not, they're going to block your email. So that's something to bear in mind. I've forgotten what your original question was now.
Yeah.
It was about it was about what I do, wasn't it? So I went off on a little tangent there, but hopefully that'll be useful. But yeah, so what we do is, because people do struggle with that consistency, because you could be sending the same pitch to hundreds of people and not hearing anything, and you could think, well, nobody's interested. But then if you just send one more, it could hit all over. It could go national, it could go international. And it's not always easy to predict. I've had stories that I've been convinced that are going to be, that are going to go wild, and they've been in 1 or 2 places. And then I've had others that have been a lot more tame, not so much of the shock factor and all of that stuff. And, that's gone crazy. So it can be hard to predict. So just be consistent. It's about timing as much as everything else. Yeah. So anyway, back to the question. So what we do is we basically do that work for them. So every day they're being pitched to our contacts, but also we have a lot of journalists who contact us. We get around 70 inquiries coming directly to us every day. So then we put our clients forward for that. And books is the other side of the business. If you want to get into the media with your business, then write a book on the topic. It'll really, really help. And because it helps so much, then we help with that side as well. And we do everything, ghostwriting and editing and yeah, so everything to do with books and PR, but specifically we work for entrepreneurs who want to grow their business.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Luana, and we
Thank you
being here. So if keep in touch, let us know when you have new things coming up or offers, and we'll be happy to share them with the audience. So
amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.